we've had it magically cut on and cut off before, so maybe if we're lucky, it'll come on all
It'll
by
wake up.
itself. But you all got your staff reports, although it might have been late, but you got your staff reports, so you just go by that. Unfortunately, the
Yeah.
audience, we don't have anything for them.
You check and see if we're good.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to see if I can get it up.
Is there anybody else who needs to sign in for the public hearing?
I guess you can just go ahead and start this. I'm not showing you what it is.
You wanna start?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know if he's trying to, unless you want me to call IT and I can see it, they can see the screen since Johnny's not getting us up.
Let me use.
Okay, we're up.
Okay.
It's up.
All right. We'll call to order the January 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning for Upson County. Can we get roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Pitts,
Yes, sir.
Chair McKinley,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilton,
Here.
Vice Chair Beatty.
What's left of me?
I guess it's a half present.
I have.
You
And
get half pay this month.
Commissioner Dawson,
Here.
you have quorum, Madam Chair.
All right. Item number 2 is the adoption of the December meeting minutes. Do I have any changes or additions, or do I have a motion to approve as is?
I'll make a motion to-
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, item number 3 is old business. It's the application for subdivision variance for the H. Bruce Green Family Partnership. We've got an email that they'd like to carry this over to the February meeting. Do I have a motion to do that?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Item number 4, new business. Item A is the application for special exception, SPX 2021-012, Matthew Smith, 2540 US Highway 19. So I know we've got material here. I know you just gave us some, Matt. So we'll open the public hearing for this. And Matt, if you want to go first and give us any additional detail from what you've already given us.
No ma'am, my proposed site is, the first space is the green space that I'd be proposing to put there. The trees would be 8 foot apart and they wouldn't get any higher than 15 foot tall in the next 30 years. They're called emerald abradii, I think that's how you say it. The flowers coming in will be perennials at your entrance, coming from US 19. The fence across the front would actually be black instead of the regular standard 8-foot fence or whatever.
So it'd be screened.
No, sir, no screen, just because you don't want people to
Oh,
feel
the
like
fence is black.
the fence will be black itself because you don't want
I
to feel like
see.
people get trapped in there and they can't see out. But then the screening would be your trees staggered in there with your landscaping. The next page is just a sketch of how it would lay out. That's with the setbacks from the highway. I think it's got to be 100 foot from the center line, being where it is. And then the next page would be just how two sets of buildings are gonna lay out. There would be 27 10 by 10 units on each side, total of 54 on that building, and there's also another building that would be identical to that. The next page is a layout of how it would be. It would be 10 by 15s on both sides of the building, a total of 54 units, 27 on each side. And then the very last page would be some larger units. It'd be 27 10 by 20s, and then there'd be 27 additional 10 by 10s, which made a grand total of 216 units total. And then I didn't print it because I forgot about it, which that's my fault, but I have my colors for my stuff laid out and highlighted if y'all wanted to kind of pass them around and look at it. I was proposing to do black doors, gray on the side, offset with another color gray. So it'd be like a gray on gray with black. Nothing funky green or, something like that. And that's,
And your gate would be a
it
security,
would be a secure gate, and it'd be fenced in all the way around, and it would slide north and south along parallel with the road. The windstorm the other night blew down two of the big trees on the I guess the neighborhood end of the place, and the power company called and had to cut them down. I think they fried the line or messed it up, caused a power outage in that neighborhood. But we'll be replacing those trees as soon as we get the site prepared.
What, the big trees?
They were Leland cypress trees that's actually blocking the neighborhood behind it from seeing it from the backside of it. But you want those for privacy for those neighbors in that neighborhood.
okay. Any questions for Matt? Okay, all right. Next on our list is Steve Sadler. Steve, you just state your address.
1060 Larrabee Drive,
Okay.
and I'm the property that's mostly affected by potential zoning requests for this particular property. And this is the first I hadn't had a chance to hear, hadn't got with Matt as far as schematics yet or anything, because the last meeting he didn't have them available. But I just got some pictures of the property, and my property and the property in question. I don't have quite enough. If I can share those, please. I can let you look at these in just a second. Unfortunately, I didn't bring enough copies. I do apologize for that. I was kind of heartened to hear as far as some screening issues that was going to be put in place. My concern is several concerns, and I really didn't know how to address the concerns because at the time I didn't know exactly what Matt had in place, so they've been putting many storage buildings on that particular property. If we talk about what's currently there, there's fencing in place, and he did say that cypress trees are there. The cypress trees he talked about that blew over fell on my power lines. We was without power, not without power, but was almost without power. It's like an emergency situation. But I guess that goes into effect as far as if you put a natural barrier there, which I think is a good idea. But in the long run, natural barriers will tend to die. Cypress trees have a certain lifespan, just like the tree. So I would like to see if this is approved, some type of fencing with an opaque type barrier on the fencing. My property is actually on the north side and on the eastern side. The eastern side will consist into the subdivision. The property is now zone commercial with some stipulations. So you got a commercial property and residential property right there together. I know this is probably not the first time this has happened, but when I was researching some of the ordinances in place, there's very little as far as given to what kind of specifics needs to be in place to make sure my property, the residential property, is not impacted by the commercial property. So if you look at the pictures, the first picture is the cypress trees on the northern side. Yeah, and you can see that the cypress trees right there it's actually on my side, on the fences on my side of the property. So those cypress trees right now are really on my property right there, going up that line. So whoever owns that property, Matt owns it now, they would have to actually put a barrier on the other side of the property, in my opinion. And plus those trees right now extend out, the cypress trees, they can go out 6, 8, 10 foot. So they extend out to my property, so you see that they're cut. We had to cut those because I have a shop right there beside it, and the trees were rubbing into my shop. So the trees were originally cut down. The former owner, Carlos Bell, he actually lived in the neighborhood also. And if you look over, and the second one is kind of from that same viewpoint from the property, there's the elevation issue. The elevation on the current property is being zoned commercial is about 5 feet above my property. So my concern would be drainage, because you got commercial property now and drainage coming off the commercial property onto residential property. That comes across my property, my mom's property, and down to the pond that's actually in Shelgina Estates also, which I own that pond also. So the concern would be you got commercial drainage going across residential property, draining into a pond. So I would like to have some EPA potential concerns about what may be draining into the pond, since it's now commercial going into residential. Before this property was residential, Carlos Bell, I said, did put these cypress trees there. And if you look on the few pictures on the end, you'll see some storage buildings that's already there. Y'all probably know those storage buildings. I think Mr. Adams owns those. Going out at night, they're blue and white. And if you look, that viewpoint that I took is from the viewpoint from the subdivision. So you have a chain link fence where you can see the actual storage buildings from the subdivision. So you have a chain link fence, and then if you go on over a little bit, you see a house that's in the subdivision where there's a barrier right there, but it's scrub bushes in the barrier. So this is probably pictures of what we don't want to happen when you have a potential commercial property and residential property together. So again, I think we need to be very specific in our buffers as far as what we're going to allow, and to make sure that we protect the residential properties. Again, I'm sorry I should have mentioned this before, but I'm also representing Ms. Barbara Shropshire, Johnny Caldwell, and my mom, Celestine Sadler. All those properties are mostly impacted by this potential change in the zoning. I know right now the minimum side yard, which I didn't see the schematics that Mr. Matt has provided. I know the minimum is 15 foot on the side yard and 35 foot for the rear. That's probably inadequate in my opinion when you have commercial and residential together right there, because you don't want sight lines from residential looking to commercial. And again, and you also don't want commercial that's going to negatively impact your residential property as far as property values and just trying to resale value with the potential property. So I would strongly recommend that maybe until we get some clear understanding on soil erosion, potential impact on that particular pond from the runoff, and some buffer issues going on, that maybe I'll table this, or maybe come back with I'm not sure of the plan as far as, and I know I can't ask Matt any questions here at this particular meeting. Yeah, we can as far as procedure wise. But I would like to know what kind of buffers plan to be in place, and actually how that's going to impact my particular property on my side. So I'll get you this in a second. Again, just going back to what I think needs to happen, again, is opaque fencing. Needs to be higher than 6 foot. I think 6 foot is the minimum that a commercial property needs to have when there's a adjacent property. I think it needs to be at least 8 or 10 foot high with opaque, and also some natural barrier also, greater than 15 foot, greater than 35 foot on the sides, just to protect my property values. And also the concern with that drainage issues, because now we have drainage coming off a higher elevation to a lower elevation, affecting residential property, affecting that particular pond out there. Okay. And I would like to also kind of throw this in there too. My residential has been there for 30 years. My mom has been there 42 years. Johnny Caldwell's house has been there 53 years. And the house below has been there 53 years. Potential properties may be impacted by this particular zoning request. So I would like y'all to maybe consider that when y'all deliberate, when y'all talk about this particular area, that those houses in that subdivision have been there a long time. So we need to make sure we take care of property values and the people that's in there now. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
The Leland Cypress that are there now, you there on your property?
On that northern side, they're on my property right now.
So
They're on the
that-
property line, but they're actually grown into my property right now. So they're
Now,
actually.
they're planted on your property?
Yes, sir, on the fences on the property that Mr. Matt bought, the trees on the outside of that property, and they're on my property line.
So
There's
they
a-
are,
I
So
have-
the
I have-
trees are planted on your,
That's
not,
what-
not
that's
the,
what
not the limbs, but the planted, the roots of the
Yeah,
tree
that's
is
what
on
I'm trying to
yours.
figure out, that those cypress are actually your property.
Yes, on the north side.
So-
On the eastern side, they're on the other side of the fence, so they're on Matt's property, but they are so close, and that's the side that actually blew down onto power lines. And that's the ones that had to be cleared off. And if you notice, I did take a picture of the clearing now right there. I know Mr. Matt did some grading on that particular property before or after he was granted access to it. But yeah, the Leland Cypress on one side is mine, on the back side, the east side, which backs up into the subdivision, is owned by Mr. Matt.
Do you have any problems with runoff now?
There is. I had to put a cauldron in under my driveway. My driveway connects to the end of the subdivision driveway. That's, I wish I had a schematic on that as far as the pictures to see. But my driveway runs into the end of the subdivision. I had to put a cauldron in right there as far as runoff from that particular property and the storage buildings that's above it, Mr. Adams' buildings. So yes, we do have a water drainage coming through my property right now. And the concern is both of those properties now, even the storage buildings, I think, Mr. Doug can tell you, that's zoned residential at the moment, I believe. So all that property at one time through that was zoned residential. My concern now is that we've got a set of property that's going to be zoned commercial, and you have commercial property adjacent to residential property, and you have runoff from commercial property to residential. So I would like to say, you know, what are we going to do about that? Holding pond, drainage pond, a larger buffer in the back to account for that? I don't know.
Can I speak? To answer his question, does that mess up how you talk in this form?
No, it's the way I understand the procedure, you get to respond to it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's, give it
So
just a
Mr.
second.
James Meeks is gonna do the grading on it. He's been out to look at it, and it's not gonna affect any of the runoff that's there now. With the proposed plan is not concrete, so concrete usually catches all that water. We're doing either a crush and run or a millings, which is a chopped up asphalt that will be laid out, which is black. And he's saying there's not gonna be that kind of runoff. It's not a large enough area for that water, but I mean, you make your own decision. He graded those lots originally back, I guess, in the 90s for
How big is that lot?
1.7, I think 1.76, 1.7. It was two smaller lots that was combined into one bigger lot.
Right,
You
so it's
remember?
less than 2 acres.
Correct. It used to not, I mean, it was like,
And you're not gonna pave it, you're gonna pave it with millings or
yes, sir.
crush and
Crush,
run?
either millings or crush and run. I like millings better, but it leaves a black, cleaner look, and it's not dusty. Crush and runs can be dusty.
Right,
I think it just makes a better dressed up look, and then you can actually take a roller machine and kind of mat it down a little bit, but it won't be asphalt, you know, but it'd still have a nice finish.
yeah.
And I asked that same question.
What about a buffer? What addresses issues with,
So on my plans, there, if you look on the north side, so the lines would be here, I have to have that 20 foot to make my sides, to make my stuff worked out. So I would be willing to go, if he could let me, I'd be willing to go where he's cut all the cedar tree limbs, you know, kind of clean it up where you can see the fence line. I'd be willing to go in there and maybe re-put something on his side or something. I mean, you know, I want to be a good neighbor. I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's right. His cedar trees are grown. They're real big, but, you know, I don't feel like I should have to cut that cost to cut them all down. Or, I mean, maybe if he wants to cut them down, I might just cut the cost on replanting them. And they'll be pretty for the rest of our lifetime. I can't say, you know, what the trees will look like.
I know we don't respond back and forth, and we're not supposed to, but, you know, he's the one rezoning the property and not me, so it should be the petitioner's responsibility to make sure that that buffer is in place and there's barriers in place, not on my property. I'm not saying the trees are the problem, but, you know, I shouldn't incur any expense either as far as rezoning this particular property. So he's got plenty, he's trying to put so many units in there. Maybe he needs to get down to the number of units he's putting in there to put those buffers in place. Again, we should be thinking about protecting residential property. There are some opinions that all our arteries and corridors in Thomaston coming in 1936-74 needs to be all commercial. Well, if you have that, you're gonna have potential commercial and residential, you know, issues like this all the time. And you know, I think strongly as a community, we need to put better restrictions in place or better requirements in place to protect residential property, because residential property 100% of the time is there first. And those residents are paying taxes, they're taxpayers, you know, they're voters, you know, they are people in the community that actually support the community. So we need to make sure we protect residential property as much as we can. And that's the reason I'm here. I mean, I'm not here just to kind of go against man, but here to make sure that residential property is protected in our community.
Anything else?
Questions?
Yeah, anybody got any questions for Steve?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Matt, do you have anything else that you need to add?
Ma'am, as far as, I guess he's talking taxes, this storage facility is gonna generate probably a tax digest of $800,000-900,000. I'd be paying taxes on, so I don't, you know, that substitute for his house taxes or whatever, but, I guess in the meanwhile, if Walgreens decided they want to buy his house next door, he would sell it for commercial property. I'm asking, I don't know that, but, you know, I'm thinking, you know, I can't predict the future. We'll be having this conversation on my yacht, but I think that in 10 years, you're going to see more of that growth north on commercial. How do you stop it? I don't know. I just think it's growing that way, and there's definitely a need for what I'm proposing to do. That's about all I got. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine,
All right.
that's fine. So, if nobody has any questions, we'll close the public hearing now. Doug, can we get your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Well-
This is a summary of your staff report.
Your somewhat version.
Yeah, somewhat. I get to see it, and you all got it in your report, but unless the audience looks over my shoulder. Sorry about that, IT problems. Again, you've met Mr. Smith. This project is 1.73 acres, as you heard. I guess I need additional information, but according to the tax assessor's website anyway, it's still 2 parcels. And one of the conditions of the rezoning, as you'll see in the staff report, is that it had to be combined. So we'll need to figure out the timing of that. You'll see that it was rezoned. June 8th is when the Board of Commissioners rezoned it from R2 to C2C. And there were 3 conditions: that the lot may only be used for mini warehouses. It has to be legally combined with that lot next door that you heard referenced. And when submitting the special exception, a site plan must show buffering and setbacks. Now, you saw the application, those setbacks and buffering weren't included there. I have not seen what you now have handed to you tonight, so that might meet that 3rd condition of the rezoning. That's something that you'll have to decide. The 1.73 acres are on the east side of US Highway 19. That's south of Harrell Road, intersection with 19 and north of Greenvale. This is, of course, also the area where you have discussed having corridor protection ordinance There is no such ordinance right now, but these are the sorts of things that, as that ordinance does get developed by the Board of Commissioners with what you've started, and maybe if there are any improvements or changes to it, these are the sort of projects that, okay, when we had this on 19, did that corridor protection ordinance meet what we wanted to do, or did it not? So this is a perfect example of what you were thinking ahead of, what that ordinance and the sort of things that would kick in when a proposal happens. So this is very timely, of course. We still have that ordinance submitted to the Board of Commissioners, and they have not workshopped it yet, so let alone had public hearings, but that's where we are on that. And of
You
course,
talking about the gateway ordinance?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I missed that part.
All right, to the north, you've got single-family residential R2. To the east, Cheryl Jean Estates Wooded, also the R2. South, you've got the vacant land and the other mini warehouses you heard referenced, those are zone C2. And west across 19, you've got single-family and wooded, that property is zoned AR. As you know, you've got standard review standards that are required for special exceptions. Those are required by state law as well as our own ordinance. You'll see those discussed in the staff report. Contrary to the purpose of the ordinance, obviously this proposal is not contrary to it, it's envisioned by it, just with conditional use. So it's understood that this is not a by right use. You have to go through the conditional approval, special exception, that there may be some circumstances that are special in this particular instance. And I think you saw that with the warehouse project you saw at your last meeting, and now you've got another one here. So you're going to start learning how these sort of projects are going to interact with our zoning and with the ideas that you have for the community and its growth. Detrimental to adjacent properties. They tend to generate minimal additional traffic or other impacts. The other impacts tend to be visual, but as you also heard, depending on the drainage plan, they can be a negative impact. Now, you hope that the engineering from the start takes care of the stormwater, but that's not a guarantee. That's something that hopefully the engineering will take care of. So you got a relatively passive use as well as it's properly maintained. Again, you don't have a lot of activity in there going on that shouldn't be. There was discussion, for instance, the last one is people repairing and working on motors or things that are in there if their vehicles are stored. So that's something that we haven't discussed this time, is that kind of open storage. Must not constitute a nuisance or hazard. Again, these uses aren't going to automatically be nuisances. They can be very passive and quiet. It's just a matter of how it's maintained and the facility is taken care of and how it's used. Effect on the existing land uses, again, you're going to have minimal impacts other than the aesthetics, perhaps stormwater, if everything is maintained properly, secured, and managed properly. Other requirements, there's going to be, of course, occupation tax if this is approved. There are state laws regarding delinquent rental payments and how those sort of sales are handled. There will be building permits will be required for these. So there are additional requirements that go along with this approval process. Then you'll see there's a paragraph in the staff report that repeats what I mentioned last month about my concern about this type of warehousing generally on our corridors. You're about to see, if this gets approved, you'd see 2 of them in the vicinity. What about a 3rd one next door or a 4th one? And how do you handle it? Is this the type of use that we want on our entrance corridors? Or if you do, how many of them are appropriate? And like I said, I think that a lot of it is the activity, and I discussed the fact that a lot of businesses interact with each other. The customers from the gas station might stop and then go to the grocery store, or maybe they've got their hair cut and let me go over here and get the restaurant and have lunch. You're generally not going to have that with warehouses. They're sort of a dead space is overstating it, but you understand compared to the other sort of activity on your major commercial corridors, these aren't the ideal type of uses. Certainly there are certain ones, a number that could be allowed. Maybe we have a spacing requirement that they have to be a distance from each other. That's certainly a possibility, but unless they turn it into a garden in the front and maybe buffering the neighborhoods, these generally just aren't the most attractive uses. They're there for storing stuff. That's their purpose. And whereas the other type of businesses on your corridor, I need to attract my customers, they need to see some of my merchandise, which we may or may not see as attractive. And the landscaping is all going to be relative to your requirements. Some people might say that this type of use, even though it's got less activity, needs more landscaping than some of the more active uses, those types of things. So I really have concern about too many of these at least. And again, if this was a major warehouse, I mean, huge, maybe in the thousands of square feet, is that something you would want on 19 or 36 or 74 or 80, the corridors that you identified? I don't think they are. So I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go into a potential ordinance, and certainly if you want to rethink the gateway ordinance, but again, it's in the hands of the Board of Commissioners now, so there's only so much you can do there. But I certainly would think that we're going to have a mini warehouse self-storage ordinance at some point in the future, and what sort of requirements should go in there. There's not a lot we can do with these proposals that are coming now, unless we speed up the corridor protection ordinance, or we develop a self-storage ordinance quickly. That's where your requirements, your conditions of approval come in, and that was the vision. It's a special exception for a reason, so that you take a special look and have the opportunity to, wait a minute, this is not by right, there may be conditions that have to be approved. And you've already started that once, and this is your second shot at this sort of use. So staff's recommendation, and again, this is based on the information that I had when I wrote the report, is that this be continued because we haven't met the requirements of the rezoning, which presumably were going to happen before this. Now, you may be satisfied with the buffer and landscape that you see there, and you could condition that as required. That was one of the 3 requirements, and the other one was the combination of the 2 lots. It's unclear to me right now, as far as I know, those lots have not been combined. So, my first thing is to continue the public hearing until the rezoning requirements have been met. Then rolling into the conditions upon approval, these are the same conditions that I initially proposed for the Eccles Circle project, and that's because you may hear a description or different uses from this one than the other one. So I didn't give you your identical conditions that you required of that project, but they are in the staff report. So if you want to compare the two and go with, to some degree the language that I proposed, but you like some of the language that you have recommended for Eccles Circle, you've got that language there in the staff report so that you can use it. Certainly this is a use that's got to have conditions for the buffering purposes, landscaping, etc., and some of the other sorts of prohibitions that you listed in your last one.
Yeah.
Let's see. And of course, we'll go into the graphics that are attached to the report. You'll see the aerial photograph which identifies the 2 lots and the property around it. You'll see just to the south of that, you've got those other self-storage units. And again, how many is enough in one space? And again, buffering concerns. And of course, there were no rules in the early days for some of these other ones. So you're going to see lack of fencing, you're going to see no crush and run, no asphalt, no security, etc. So certainly those examples will give you what could be continued if you don't place the appropriate conditions on these new uses. There's a photo in there looking north on 19. You see the wooded area, the church, sort of scattered development across the street. It's heavily wooded. And then down on the south side, you can see some single-family residences and those other mini warehouses. And then the picture in your staff report shows the storage units and the cargo containers. Those have been removed by Mr. Smith, so it's a cleared lot now, but it gives you an idea of what the property looks like currently anyway. And that concludes my staff report, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. Any questions, first off?
I think we're talking about the mini warehouses. I think Mr. Sadler and the neighborhood would they would be a much more objective to something that was a higher traffic commercial, business in there. Right now, as far as traffic, it's not going to really affect them with the proper buffers that he can't see it. They can't see it from the property. I don't see that the setbacks is a serious issue as long as you got the right buffers to take care of it so you're not seeing it. Your traffic's not going to be a situation that's going to really create an adverse, thing. If you had a convenience store put out there and, in adjacent to your property, then all the traffic that's coming in day and night and whatever, I think that would cause you more grief than many storage buildings there that's going to have minimal traffic. As long as the proper buffers are set in place so you can't see it, and you don't have a water runoff situation that's taken care of. I don't see that it's, would be. I'd be worse if I owned the property and you were going to put a convenience store right next to me. I think that would bother me for us affecting my traffic and everything. But that's my opinion for what it's worth.
Where is your property located exactly in relation to this?
My own property on the north and on the east.
Across Laramie Drive.
Across Laramie Drive?
Laramie Drive, yes. My driveway runs into Laramie Drive.
Okay.
All that property all the way down, and I'm on the ponds, all the way down to the pond.
So you're not actually adjacent to the property in question?
No.
I mean,
No, but my land buffer is on the north and the east.
I understand.
Is it your mom's house on the,
My mom
North?
Yes, my mom, on the east.
okay, on the
She's
east,
the
yeah.
last house, brick
Oh.
house in the subdivision
So-
before my property.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Caldwell and Miss Barbara Schrimpsteyer's is the house across from her, which is kind of adjacent from the current mini storage buildings, but kind of across from the current potential ones. Actually, my mom would be the more impacted, and plus my property too. My property is between my mom's house and my house is my property also, which is where the drainage,
That empty lot.
runoff would be a concern.
The empty
The empty
lot.
lot?
Yes.
Your mom's house and Barbara's house are across the road from what we're talking about. Is that
Right.
correct? Okay. And on the lower side of both of those is the pond that you spoke of.
Right.
Yes.
And the Laramie runs right into my driveway, so my
Yes.
so my property butts, it's directly butts this particular,
Yes.
zoning, CT
Yeah,
zone.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's your two lots, and to the south is an empty lot, and you own that empty lot?
No, that's Mr. Adams.
That's Mr. Adams, okay,
Yeah.
that's still Adams, okay.
Mr. Charles at the tax commissioner's office said that line that he's talking about should be coming off any day now, but that joins my two lots from where we went on the last zoning and combined them.
So that has been done?
I've already asked for it to be done. It's supposed to have been done, but I don't think it's been done yet, but it will be done before this is, this
Okay.
would be, because I couldn't use the line has to be combined to give me the setbacks I need. And we agreed that we would take it off, and that's what, I've already done my part. It's just I'm waiting on the tax commissioner people to do theirs.
Tax assessors, okay.
Tax dollars at work. You know how that goes.
Okay. Any other questions? Jeff? Do I have any motions? I know that we do not have a lot of this information. I know we've gotten it in pieces, like you just showed us the colors and stuff like that. But to have it in a documented fashion, we haven't gotten all that yet. So, do I have a motion? how you guys would like to.
Could I ask one
Sure.
more question? Mr. Saddle and Matt, would each of you be receptive to mitigate somehow this differences to satisfy what you've asked for? Could that, is that possible? Is that something that
I
can
mean,
work?
I didn't come here to start a fight with anybody, I'm just trying to develop this little piece of property, so,
Yeah.
I mean,
Are you opposed to doing buffers on the back,
on
To-
the north side,
East side.
east side? So
You
that
mean
their
where
property,
Toward Laramie
trees-
Drive,
on it.
you talking about
Yeah,
toward
that's
Laramie
towards-
Drive?
the trees are already there. Yeah, I mean, so what do you want me to do? I mean, I'm already replacing the one that fell down, I couldn't control
The ones
that.
that fell down were dead, so I think that's my concern is that.
So I'll keep them, I'll put something in writing or whatever, I'll keep that back buffer fresh and nice and clean and, you know, I won't make sure, if it looks like it's gonna die, I'll dig it up and plant another one.
You think y'all could set aside some time, both of y'all
Yeah.
get together out there and come
I
to
know
something?
exactly what he's talking about, he's saying that the cedar trees are already maybe at their maximum potential. And if
Okay.
he's fine with me digging up my own trees and planting some new ones, it's gonna take a little longer to grow taller, I mean, I can do that. But these trees are already, I guess, 15, 20, I don't know.
And
they're
you've
big.
already made the statement that you want to be a good neighbor.
Yeah, I want to be a
We
good
know
neighbor.
that.
That's exactly
So
right.
why don't we do this? Why don't we give them an opportunity to get together and peacefully talk this thing out? And
I'd
come
also
back
like
with-
to see him maybe look at this runoff issue, which probably would be the most grievous thing. Maybe get some statement from an engineer, addressing that, to maybe alleviate some of Mr. Sadler's concerns that, whatever surface he decides to put is not gonna flood that pond. I can't imagine, the amount of rainfall that falls on a 1.7 acres. I guess with the surface that he's talking about,
yeah, without being
I
concrete.
don't know that it would negatively impact the runoff. You would have probably an equivalent amount of soil drainage, but a statement from an engineer would probably go a long way to alleviate some concern.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So, do I have a motion, I'm thinking we continue this until
Yeah, I think we need to table it
Until we-
until
have, so,
I believe the public hearing's still open, right?
well, I closed the public hearing, but I'm thinking I'm gonna reopen it, so that we can come back and address once we have more information.
I think the developer's gonna have to give us some more definitive answers in terms of some of these concerns and give him an opportunity to address those in a public hearing and satisfy our concerns. Now, we just enumerate what those concerns are.
Well, and you'll have, number one, you've got the basics, you've got the conditions that you imposed last month, you've got conditions that are proposed this time. You've heard the concerns of the neighbors, so I think you've got a lot of information, it's just a matter of how you put that into conditions and how you want to fashion it.
Well, the first thing he needs to do, in my view, is to resolve the issue of the joining of these two pieces, these two tracks. Because nothing moves forward until that's done. And then come back, maybe have Mr. Sadler come back as well, if they meet, and discuss, and try to work out their differences. that both of them can come back and readdress in a public forum, a public discussion.
But isn't it our responsibility to set a standard if we're going to set a standard for what kind of buffer, what kind of fencing, the line? It's our responsibility to set a standard there, because instead of putting it by neighborhood, then you're opening up a different situation. So as far as the back line protection, what's going to be as a blind, what's going to be as the buffer, that's our responsibility to set that standard. I understand them as good neighbors and they're working out whatever's going to be there, but it's ultimately, what we would set as a standard, and it could be debated back and forth. But if we don't set that standard, then we're opening it up for whatever the next one up the road is, whatever the next one down the street is going to be. As far as that back street off of Laramie Drive, what we're going to require to hide that commercial property from the residential property. And so I think that's our responsibility to say, okay, Matt, you need this standard, whether it's a 6-foot fence that's got mesh on it, or it's a 10-foot fence with whatever, or it's a plant vegetation blind, or both, or whatever that standard is. That's what we're supposed to do, to set that standard, right? Am I saying it right?
I would agree with that.
And I think ultimately it will be our decision.
Yeah.
But anytime when you can gather as much information as you can get to make a sound decision, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not saying we do it right this minute. We got to set. We're the ones that should make that call, for him. And so then it is a standard for the next option that comes up that we got to set in front of us. And
Right.
it'd be a wonderful world if everybody could just go out there and do it. But you got to set this. This needs for us to set that standard of what that's going
But
to be.
you would agree that whatever we decide to do, if we can do it in an amenable fashion, that would be beneficial, not only to the community, but to the citizens and the taxpayers.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but I mean, it should be something.
I'm not opposed to what you're saying, but, it's also based on input from the concerned parties.
I mean, our goal is to make as many people happy as we can,
But-
still set something.
We established a standard in our proposed gateway ordinance. Now, whether or not that addresses a backlot line or a buffer, but it certainly does address a vegetative buffer
On 19.
on 19.
Right.
So if we could somehow mirror that maybe, or, I don't know. Maybe we could look at that.
First off, do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? So we will reopen the public hearing and continue that to February, first off. Let me put this out there and you guys give me feedback on what you think about this. A motion to continue with the following things coming back documented at the February meeting. One, the proof that that the tracks have been joined. I know you say that, but
Yes, ma'am.
till we see it.
Sure.
Two, the staff report talks about the minimum packet, what's involved in that. That talks about drainage. That talks about a site plan with driving surface, dimensions of the driving surface, construction materials, colors, parking areas, landscape and buffer plans. I know you've given us the number of storage units and dimensions. Having all of that documented, when this comes back, so that we have something from you that says, this is what my plan is. This is how wide the driving area is gonna be, this is how close to the lines it's going to be, or,
I have that, well, okay.
yeah, but all the way around. Because we're now not talking about just the side, just the front. We're talking about the sides and the back.
It's on this second page. Shows the sides are 20s, the front's 100 foot from the center line, and the very back is,
Okay, I
20
didn't
foot
see this
from the
page.
back
I
line.
skipped all the way to the other one.
and it's
Okay,
5 foot more than the minimum requirements.
okay. The last thing that I would put out there is for you and Mr. Sadler to get together and come up with something that you guys can agree to, Matt, that you're willing to do to protect the homeowners behind it. Now, obviously, this is, you can open the door up to every homeowner that's looking at it, but you can look at this and know there's limited ones, and you've got 2 of the properties there, and you're representing another one that's there. So, I think understanding what we can do on the back side of it to find some agreement makes for both of you guys to be happy in the end, hopefully. What do you guys?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I make a motion.
Joel?
Yes.
Yes.
So if I make a motion for all those things I just mentioned, come back to,
I'm interested in the north boundary of it. What's gonna happen, on the house on the north side, next to him.
okay, so that's what we're asking him is for all the boundaries that have residential. I'm not worried about the
So
Adams.
the cedar tree is already on his property on the north side that he's cleaned up, I guess, to see the better view, I'm assuming. So now he wants me to plant the trees all the way down to 300, 270 foot on the north side on his side? Because I don't have room to plant them on my side. If you look at that second page, it's, he's on the north side, and that is the highways out there where the center lines are. If he's on this north side, then those cedar trees are already on his land. That's, so if I had to put a buffer there as well, I wouldn't have enough to make my turn for my buildings.
And I know we're not supposed to go back and forth, but then that may be the problem, because he needs to decrease the amount of buildings he's gonna have. Because the buffer should be on his side, not mine.
Right.
He's the one proposing the change. And again, I'm not here as far as any animosity with Matt. I don't know him personally, but there again, I just want to make sure residential is protected from a commercial property. Commercial petitioner should be the one providing the buffer.
But does the buffer have to be vegetation?
Yes, it should be, because the site's to the subdivision to the house. You're trying to protect that residential property. Because, I mean, if you look at the pictures from the storage buildings already there, the blue and white ones, you see a fence clear right through them from the subdivision. You know, and again, you're talking about resale value, property value. I think that does affect property value, resale value, as far as what you see out from your front door, from inside
That's
the
the
door.
man, get the man.
So, and again, I mean, that's just, I guess that's some of the specifics we and Matt can talk about when we get together on that.
On these photographs that you provided us, who cleaned out underneath these trees?
I did, because I have a building right there next to those trees, and those trees, limbs were extending out to my building. I have a storage building, well, a garage or a workshop.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Andy Mackney.
Andy,
I
say
live
that,
on the north side against 19.
and what was your last, what was your last
All
name?
the trees there, they're fine like they are, but I'm trying to figure out, are you gonna tear them down, or are you gonna leave them
I was
alone?
gonna leave all that.
He's gonna leave all of
I'm
it.
leaving
That's
every
fine,
cedar
that's fine.
tree all the way around, the ones he's talking about,
Yeah.
anyway. That would never be touched.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't want you to have to see those,
Yeah.
those buildings.
So what was your last name, sir?
Matney,
Can you spell that for me?
Mackney, Andrew,
Okay, and what's your address?
2580, Highway 19 North. There's a little bitty house close to the boundary, and then the bigger house is the one I live in.
Okay.
And I would say that the cedar trees on the fence, the cedar trees on my side of the property, the fence is on the other side. So the trees have no ability to grow branches going into the commercial property. They're on my side of the property, which Carlos Bell, the original property owner, put them there. We had a handshake agreement basically with that, and I guess that's my concern.
Can we handshake them, replacing them with some new ones?
Well, unfortunately, you're going commercial and you can sell that property to somebody else and handshake doesn't work like that, I don't think. But again, I still think buffer needs to be provided for by the commercial. For the property owner is changing it to commercial. My opinion, I don't know if that's, I don't know how it's been in the past with when this situation arose or not, so.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second your motion if that was what you made.
Doug, are you okay? Okay, you got all that? All in favor? Aye. Okay. So you know what you're coming back with. Document it.
Matt, do you need these back?
You know.
Do you need these back? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll borrow your set and make photos, copies of them.
You can have these.
All
this
right,
one, 'cause
anything
we
that
got-
is submitted to you, I'll need a copy.
Did you get this? Okay. I'll give you this. I'll put that up there in your stack.
Thank you.
All right. All right, item B, application for subdivision variance. After the fact, Nathan E. Duke Jr., Carla Denise Smith, Kelvin B. Duke, south side of Andrews Chapel Road, south of Holloway Road, parcels 069-076A, 076B, 076C. 3 lots of 145.057 acres. We'll open the public hearing for this. Are you representing?
Yes.
Okay, all right, if you'd like to make your, thanks, Matt.
Okay. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, looking at that clock over there. But I'm trying not to be as confusing as this last one was either. This item started in 2019. I had a meeting with Mr. Ned Duke about dividing his property south of the road to his children. So I went from there.
Hey, Matt,
Hey,
can y'all go?
you had your time, let me add mine. So I went with Mr. Duke and looked at the property and we talked. Of course, Eddie was there, Eddie Duke was there too, this was Ned Duke, Eddie Duke was there too. And he was listening to our conversation because Mr. Duke, Mr. Ned Duke was in pretty bad shape health-wise. He told me that he wanted to divide his property into 3 pieces. And so I said, okay, that's not a problem. With this long tract like this, I can cut it into 3 equal pieces of road frontage and go all back with equal acreage. He said, no, I don't want to do that. I know all about the property. That will destroy each tract. So nobody will end up with a reasonable tract out of those 3 tracts. He said, what I want to do is put 1 good-sized tract in the front and a road down each side so that it could get to the back properties. And I said, Mr. Duke, you can't do that with the roadways if you have a subdivision. If you have those 3 tracks, it makes a subdivision. So I said, you can't do that. But I said, now, there may be a way. If you will listen to me and pay attention to what I'm saying, then I can cut a tract down the middle and cut 2 roads, driveways down each side to go to the back tracks. I said, but what you'll have to do with that is you will have to record, if I make these plats, you will have to record this first tract, you know, by itself. So what you've done then, by recording the first tract, you have actually cut this big piece of property into 2 pieces. So it's no longer a subdivision, it's not 3 pieces, it's 2 pieces. I said, okay, now when I get all these plats finished, you record that one, you get a deed to that one, you deed it to your children, to your child. Then wait a period of time, and you can record the other 2. Because now you've got 2 tracts, a big tract in the front and a bigger tract in the back. So now you've got the big tract, you've already cleared the front tract, it's okay. So you go back into the back tract and cut it twice with the other 2 plats, and it's neither one of them is a subdivision by that definition of 3 tracts as a subdivision, because they're not all run at one time. So he and Eddie understood this, you know, that's the way to do this, to keep from having, and this is a family division. This is not something he's fixing to sell. And it's all going to stay in his family. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Ned Duke died before anything got done. So it fell on Eddie as the executor, and he heard all of my discussion. He knew exactly how to handle it. But I didn't find out until 2021 that he didn't do what he was supposed to do. He went up and recorded all 3 plats at the same time and got deeds, all 3 deeds at the same time. Well, that does make it back to 3 tracts. But I didn't find this out until 2021. When Ms. Duke, who inherited her property from Eddie, when Eddie died, Ms. Duke goes up and talks to Doug about getting a building permit on her tract. Well, Doug says, no, I don't give you a building permit. That's an illegal subdivision, or illegal something. But he tells her, and so he sends her away from that with the instructions of calling me and telling me to get up there because I had done something illegally. So I go up to see what Doug, and see, I didn't have any idea that all this stuff was done at the same time. I didn't have any idea about that. So I go up there to see Doug, and he explains the situation to me, that he would never give her a building permit because it was all started off illegally. So I'm blown away because I did what I was supposed to do. It wasn't my fault that they messed it up. So I asked Doug, well, what are we going to do? I mean, this woman has property out there, 48 acres, 48.394 acres, and she can't build a house on it. Eddie has died. She wants to move out of the house that she lives in because Eddie died in that house. She wants to build another house. She can't get a building permit to build on 48 acres that she actually owns. And it has, the well had been probated and everything. She owns that tract. So Doug, I keep asking Doug, you know, well, he said just start over. That's what he told me, start over. You know, make it legal, start over. So I'm assuming y'all have in front of you, out of your packet, what I have started over with. This plat now has the right definitions and all of the information on it to comply with a subdivision, except for one thing. A subdivision cannot have a roadway, a driveway, more than 500 feet. So that's what I'm here for today. And I'm doing this out of, well, let's say the goodness of my heart, because I could have walked away from it because it wasn't my fault. So I'm asking for y'all to give a variance on this particular subdivision, on these two roadways on either side of the plat. You've got a plat that shows these two roadways. They are extremely long. One's are 2,900 feet, the other one's 1,300 feet. That's considerably more than 500 feet. But when these lots stand alone, there is no actual, restriction on the length of a driveway. But that is beside the point. Doug told me I had to do this to straighten it out so that he could actually legally give these people a building permit on 45 acres, 48 acres of property. So what I'm asking for is a variance on these sidelines, these roadways as I call them. And these roadways are 60 feet wide. That's as wide as a county road. This is not a 30-foot strip that I've put in there. So it's a 60-foot strip that on either side of that. So I guess basically what I'm saying is, right down to the last thing is I'm asking for the variance, and I need y'all's help to help me help Mrs. Teresa Duke get her building permit so that she can build on her house.
Any
I
questions?
think this has happened in the past. Y'all have given variances on that length. I'm willing to answer any questions that I can.
Any questions? Anybody have questions?
I don't.
Joel?
These roadways, they don't exist now, they're just on paper, right?
Oh, yes, sir. They're just there. They give access. Every tract that has a house on it has to have access to a public road. And these do show you've got your map up there. It's a 60-foot wide strip.
Well, I understand
It's
that.
not a road now.
No,
It's not a
It's,
road now.
no, it's just
No.
undeveloped land
No,
that they would use, each
no,
tract would
there's
use.
no roads there anywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
What's the terrain look like out there?
Pardon me?
I mean, this has been surveyed,
Yes.
so a road actually can go in that strip.
If they want to put it in there, they can, yes, sir.
Okay. Because I know that sometimes you run into a ravine or something, and you ain't gonna build a road through there.
Well, that is, see, this property was inherited, misspelled, inherited, on this property was inherited. So it's up to them to do whatever they want to. This is what they inherited.
I understand.
So they can do what they want to on their property. Of course, now, if I get to talking too much, you gotta shut me up. Even Mr. Ned Duke had never had a way to get to the back of the property. That's the reason that he said that he didn't want me to cut 3 long strips back there, because then nobody could get to the back, use any of the property. He actually went on an easement over on the Cato Lumber Company to get back in there so he could get to his field.
Right.
So he was right in it, and of course, it would have been real easy for me to cut 3 tracks out, all of them have road frontage and go all the way to the back. Simple. But like I say, I need to hush, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
So, who gets which tract here?
The names are on.
The names are on.
That's their name?
They are
Aren't the names on there?
Teresa,
This is
Cynthia,
Teresa, that's Kelvin, and that's
Kevin.
Carla.
Okay. Just trying to figure out who was loved the least.
Pardon me?
Nothing.
It's age. I think it starts with age. Eddie was the front and Kelvin, and then, yeah. It was by age,
I
not
see.
blood.
Okay. I was getting to that back side of that property's gonna be a booger.
Well, it's all in the family,
I understand. Well, what if Kevin wants to build a house on his 48 acres?
He's
You're gonna
got,
have to cut him a road in
he's
there.
got 60-foot strip that he
I
can put a road on.
understand. I mean, I'm just making observations.
No questions?
Yeah.
Do you have,
Certainly, I
For
think
us?
you've heard a pretty good summary of it. Your packet gives you, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so you've got the plat, so you can see what was done. Of course, normally, what would happen is this would have come before you, It's minor subdivision, as you know, and that's normally reviewed administratively, but whenever you don't want to follow the rules, there's nothing in the ordinance that allows me to give administrative waivers or variances, which are referenced in the ordinance. Therefore, we need to come to you, even though normally something like this would not be reviewed, but they're varying from the rules, and that's primarily why we're here, is the variances for the two driveways. That was one. There are multiple ways that this could have been solved, maybe only two, but this was the one that they decided to go with. So you're going to see that, and this sort of gives you a peek into my traditional subdivision review. I basically just take every section and say, did they meet it, did they not? And if they didn't, you'll see a comment, or maybe it's just important in that particular instance. So I've got 10 comments in there. I would hope that if you grant the variance, you also require those other things to be met. Some are comments and there's not much to be done, and one is as minor as a misspelling, no big deal. The biggest question that you heard here is the variances and whether they're to be granted, and Gary certainly was accurate in saying that you have given variances very similar to these lengths and longer, at least one that I can think of. So it would not be unprecedented. It actually is precedented that you would grant these variances, and we're just trying to correct what was not done correctly before. Again, if you choose to grant the variances, I would just ask that you also require the other issues be satisfied with your variance approval. Again, you can, the picture speaks for it. You do get the access that you need. They exceed 500 feet, which is very clear in the subdivision ordinance. That's the maximum that you can have. So, but there's two sections, one for waivers, one for variances. This would qualify under the variance, and they either get granted or they don't. So there's not really much more I can explain, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Can I ask you, Dad, what the purpose of that restriction is?
Well, we could get wax philosophical about flag lots and whether they're beneficial or a problem for how land is developed. I would submit that probably they're not a real good idea, and the longer you allow that flag stick portion of the flag to be, you just got all kinds of problems that happen, and invisible lots and service. I mean, an emergency vehicle now has to go down that driveway if there's a reason to.
Right.
If a tree falls over, emergency vehicles may have to get past that. Obviously, the trash, we're not going to go down to your house to pick the trash up. It's going to be way down there.
Right.
So, if you don't mind picking your trash off way down there, good on you. That's something that you have chosen to do, and anybody that buys the property from you after, in 40, 50, 60, 100 years, has chosen to do the same thing if this lot and land doesn't get rebought and reconfigured. But it's generally just all the problems that arise from it. And in terms of efficiency of land use, if the future, and again, your comp plan is coming up starting this year and next year, so we'll get to have all kinds of great discussions, I hope. But what is a proper and good land use pattern, and what is efficient, good to use, allows for good public services, installation of public services that require pipes and wires.
Right.
And when you start this kind of development, number one, very often it's just to avoid building a road, because those things are just so darn expensive. When, if you look at the land use pattern, wouldn't it make sense to just have a road there? There's a section of Atwater Road, if you look at the tax assessors, I believe there's like 12, 14 of these things next to each other. Flag lot, flag stick, flag lot, flag stick.
One on Jeff Davis.
Somebody just didn't want to build a road.
Yeah.
Now deliveries got to go all the way down. Thank goodness we don't have paper boys, because I wouldn't want to deliver paper if I had to go deliver to the door, and I did that in the past because we delivered to the door.
Yeah.
But it's just an inefficient land use, and it's just to make things cheaper for the developer. This is a little bit different from that because it's just a family and it's only 3. But when you get 16 of them next to each other, we have another one that's sort of called a peacock, where we get multiple driveways together. So better land use would probably say this is not the best way to go.
There's no houses out there on those driveway strips, and there probably never will be any houses out there, but you can't say that for sure. But you must have access to a public road if you're ever going to have a house out there. Otherwise, we didn't even need that.
Right. You're better off to go ahead and do that now than to,
Pardon me?
I said, you're better off to go ahead and do this now, not knowing what the future's gonna hold, as opposed to,
Well, I've got to leave those tracks accessible.
right, that's what I'm saying.
And of course, Mr. Ned Duke knew exactly what he was talking about. He knows his property. He's been on it, he was on it for 100
Right.
years almost.
Okay, do I have a motion with making sure that we touch on Doug's 10 points?
I have a motion. And my motion is to approve this final plat, minor family subdivision for Nathan Edward Duke Senior Estate. My
I'll second.
motion is to approve that.
With those 10 stipulations that's in Doug's
And
report?
granting the variances.
Yes.
Granting the variance.
Yes,
Let's be very clear.
And your second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
well, do we need to address the fact that the plat is not as, apparently it's out of scale?
That's in these 10,
Okay, it is in
Yeah.
there that
Yeah.
it's acceptable?
yeah.
Okay, well,
Okay.
Doug told me, you know, when I talked to him before, I told him that I couldn't put that size tract on a smaller, you know, on a sheet. It'd be big as a bed sheet.
Right,
Well-
and Madam
You
Chair,
know, they
if
might come,
if you look at the wording, it says that
Yeah.
while we
It's
recognize,
legible.
I
It's
mean, we've
okay.
dealt with them before.
Anyhow, he told me that
Yeah.
as long as the plat was
Legible,
legible,
yeah, and that's
he would
fine.
accept a 1
Yeah,
inch
that's
by
fine.
3
This
inch.
is readable and legible, yeah.
All in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now I have one question, and, you know, I do appreciate that.
has the vote been taken, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Okay.
5-0.
Those 7 things, well, I don't know what they are.
Yeah, we'd like to hear what the 7 things are.
You know, I have not got any idea what those 7 things are.
Did they not get this?
That I've got to correct,
He
so to
was
speak.
emailed it.
Okay. I think you got it in email, but
What's that email you got here?
There's a copy, you can have it.
Okay, I've got my copy.
so,
Now, I've got my copy right here.
yeah,
You
so
know,
there's,
and I'm not trying to make y'all stay any later, but if you'll look at my copy right here, you see those red lines on there? Those are almost ridiculous. But I need to shut my mouth up because y'all have granted my variance as long as this is a minor subdivision that Doug can pass on.
with those 10 things, just to make it consistent.
So this is what I've got to deal with, Doug? This thing that you sent me last night at 8:30?
Yes, sir.
And I didn't even see it till this morning because I don't check my email after 8:30 at night.
Did you not get a copy of this?
I got a spare. I got a spare.
Yeah, I mean, I got one in email.
Before I get up and leave here, one of these things on this sheet, now, let me just ask, since it's now, I guess y'all have sent this back to Doug, you have approved the variance if these things are taken care of. So it falls back now on a minor subdivision, and it falls into his purview to accept it or not. Is that correct? It doesn't come back to y'all.
Correct,
Right, that's right.
that's right.
Right.
Okay. I need to shut up, but one of the things on this list, I don't know whether y'all even looked at it or not, it says I can't set the track number. I can't call it an A. I gotta call it a 1 or a 2 or a 3. I don't understand that. You know, that don't make any sense to me. Of course, now I guess I can
Is that part of
take
the
all that up with,
subdivision?
I can take all that up with Doug.
Yeah, I mean, these are
Madam Chair,
coming,
it's so that you have a uniform process across all of 11,000 parcels plus in Upson County. So that because some subdivisions will be have a block, and they'll have a lot within the block. So you have a uniform process where one is numbered and one receives letters, and you don't reverse them. There's one system and one system only. While it sounds picky, when you look at a system across 11,000 parcels, the entire county, you want a uniform system, that's the system. It's not the first time I've made that comment, it might be the first time to Gary, but
Hadn't these already been deeded, Jim?
What?
Hadn't these tracks already been deeded?
Yes,
It's in the deed that way.
yes.
It needs to be left alone.
If it's something that's deeded that way, I mean, is it a
redo
real
the
issue?
deed. It's an illegal subdivision.
Already been deeded.
Okay, I better get out of here.
And the plat was recorded, that's a misdemeanor. That's in the order.
The fact that those other tracks is a misdemeanor,
That they were illegally recorded is a misdemeanor, yeah.
Yeah.
That's in the ordinance.
in what order?
The
Subdivision ordinance?
In fact, the clerk filed it. And they mitigate it somehow. She should've known better.
Well, I might explain that they do not proof or double check
Well, it's
documents.
part of her job, I know that.
all right. Item 5 is the distribution of approved 2022 meeting
What do
schedule.
we approve? Meeting
No,
schedule?
we approved it last time. Here's the schedule. It's a copy of it.
Publishing it, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, yeah.
Gonna stay on track. I've been out.
Yes, yes. All right. Moving on, elections for 2022. I will tell you, make it fast.
Yeah.
Well, I tell
Make
you,
it fast.
I got wings ready.
I'm going as long as I can here.
Then I'll make a motion, I say let's keep the officers like they are.
That's the motion you made last year.
And it worked well.
I think he's
Well, it did. As long as I can stay above ground, I'm okay with it.
That's an incentive.
Huh?
That's
It
an
is an
incentive.
incentive. I've enjoyed it. My little time in the sun.
All right. Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Unanimous, thank you. That was easy.
Was it unanimous, Lisa?
I'm not sure. It's 50-50.
Then the motion failed if it was 50-50.
No, 50-50 on me.
Gotcha.
6, planning commissioner issues and announcements.
I don't have
Anybody?
any.
Welcome back, Sam.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Happy to be here, proud to
We're
serve.
certainly happy to have you back.
Well, I'm glad to be back. At
I,
one point it was in
The long road,
flux.
long road, wasn't it?
It is, it's still a long road. I'm quite not at the end of it, but I'm getting
you're
there.
farther down it.
Yeah, I'm further down it than I was.
Item 7, secretaries issues and announcements.
Nothing new.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What time's the game start?
Game?
8 o'clock.
What game?
8 o'clock.
6:50.